Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. In this episode, we're talking about elk hunting strategies for opening day of archery season and where to start. Opening day has a way of getting into a hunter's head. You've waited all year. You've trained, you've scouted, you've e-scouted maps until your eyes hurt. You've shot your bow 1,000 times. You've got gear piled up like you're marching into battle. The anticipation builds and builds, and then suddenly it's here. Day one. And here's the truth. A lot of hunters blow it on day one, not because they don't care, not because they don't have the heart. They blow it because they let excitement overrule strategy. I've been guilty of it too. Opening mornings in my early years usually went one of two ways. I either charged in too aggressively and blew elk out of the country before the hunt even started, or I sat back overthinking, waiting for some perfect scenario that never came. Either way, I came back to camp with a pit in my stomach and that little voice in my head saying, "Man, you just burned your best chance." The reason opening day matters so much is because it sets the tone, not just for the morning, not just for the evening, but for your entire hunt. A smart day one puts you in position to build momentum. A sloppy day one can leave you playing catch up the rest of the week, or worse, educating the elk in your area before you've even had a real chance. So what should opening day actually look like? I'll tell you this, it's not about killing an elk at first light, although that can happen. It's about making disciplined choices that get you close without burning the country down. It's about learning how the elk are behaving that particular year, in that particular unit, on that particular week in September. It's about setting yourself up for success on day 2, 3, 4, and beyond. Here's another hard truth. A lot of hunters think opening day is going to be chaos. Bugles everywhere, bulls charging in, action nonstop. But more often than not, especially in pressured areas, opening day can feel dead, quiet. Bulls aren't fully ramped up. Cows are still scattered. Hunters are bumping around everywhere, slamming truck doors at 4 a.m. and blowing locator bugles from every ridge. Elk notice. They feel that pressure instantly, and if you are not disciplined, you get, lumped in with the rest of the noise. The mindset you carry into opening day is just as important as the tactics. If you walk in believing you need to make it happen in the first 2 hours, you're setting yourself up for frustration and mistakes. If you walk in ready to adapt, ready to read sign, ready to learn, and willing to let the hunt build, it changes everything. In this episode, I'm breaking down exactly how to approach opening day of archery season, from that first step at the trailhead to how you read sign, how you balance aggression and patience, how you use calling as a tool instead of a crutch, what you should be doing in the middle of the day, and how to make the evening hunt work in your favor. Each of these choices matters. So before you charge into the timber, before you blow your first bugle, before you convince yourself you've got to make it happen right now, slow down, take a breath, and remember, opening day doesn't decide whether you fill a tag or not, but the choices you make on opening day will echo through the rest of your hunt. So let's get into it. When I think about opening morning of archery season, the hunt doesn't actually begin in the timber. It begins at the trailhead, at camp, or right there at your truck. I can't tell you how many hunts have gone sideways before a guy even made his first step off the gravel. Elk hunting, especially archery elk hunting, is a game of details, and those details start before you ever unclip your pack or knock an arrow. Here's what I mean. On opening morning, excitement is sky high. It feels like Christmas morning. It feels like, you've got all this adrenaline flowing, and the temptation is to rush, slam the truck door, shuffle gear, whisper loudly to your buddy. It all seems small in the moment, but elk hear that stuff. Elk smell that stuff. You may think you're still getting ready, but in reality, the hunt has already started and you're already tipping your hand. Trailhead discipline means treating those first steps with the same seriousness as your final stalk. Keep your voice down, move deliberately, don't go fumbling around with gear that should have been squared away the night before. Your boots should be laced, your release on your wrist, your bow ready, your pack locked in tight, so when you roll up, you can slip out quiet and clean. And then there's the wind. Let's talk about it real quick because wind is everything in elk hunting. On opening morning, thermals are going to be dropping before sunrise. That cool air is sinking down the mountainside into the valleys. If you go charging uphill with no plan, your scent cone is going to wash right down into prime elk country. You might never even see the elk you just educated. Smart hunters check the wind before they leave the truck. A little puff bottle or even just a pinch of milkweed will tell you the truth. Know what the thermals are doing, but also understand that once the sun comes up, things shift. Thermals will rise, and what worked for the first 2 hours of daylight isn't going to reverse on you quickly. That's why your entry route has to be chosen with both morning and mid-morning thermals in mind. Now let's talk about timing. Every hunter loves the idea of being on the ridge at first light, but here's the deal. If you start too late, you're playing catch up. By the time you hike in, elk are already moving from feeding to bedding. They've got the advantage and you're reacting instead of anticipating. I like to be in position before it gets gray light. That doesn't always mean I'm pushing deep into the timber in the dark, but it does mean I'm ready and set up where I can listen, where I can watch, and where I can move once I hear something break loose. Here's a mistake I see a lot of time. Guys treat opening morning like a race. They think the first one to the ridge wins. In reality, all that does is get elk bumped and pressure multiplied. The better play is moving with intention. Take your time, stay quiet, stop often and listen. If you get busted at the trailhead or blow elk off the hillside because you were too eager, you're digging yourself into a hole that's tough to climb out of. Think of those first few hours as setting the table for the whole hunt. Your job is not to force an encounter at all cost. Your job is to move into elk country without being noticed, to learn what's happening that morning, and to be disciplined enough to adjust when the sun comes up and the thermals flip. Do that, and you're not just hunting, you're hunting smart. Remember, archery elk hunting is about stacking odds. Trailhead discipline and first light strategy are the foundation for everything that comes next. If you get sloppy here, the rest of your day is already compromised. But if you move with patience, with purpose, and with respect for the wind, you're in the game and you're starting your season off the right way. One of the biggest temptations on opening day is to act like every track, every rub, and every sound means you're in the middle of the herd. I get it. You're fired up. You want confirmation, and when you see that first set of elk tracks, you feel like you've already found them. But here's the truth. Not all sign is equal. Reading what's fresh and what's old can be the difference between chasing ghosts all morning or putting yourself in the middle of living, breathing elk. Let's start with tracks. Fresh elk tracks are sharp. The edges haven't crumbled. If you press your hand into the dirt beside them, you should feel about the same firmness. If the track feels like it's had time to dry, crack, or sink in from rain, it's older. Pay attention to the depth. Heavy bulls leave deeper imprints, especially in softer ground. But don't make the rookie mistake of thinking deep means fresh. Look at the details. Sharp edges, moisture still present, even the way grass is bent over at the edges of the trail. Those are the telltale signs that something just passed through. Next is the poop. Elk droppings that are shiny, moist, and soft are fresh. If you can touch it and it's still warm, that's as fresh as it gets. Dull, dried out pellets mean you're looking at old sign that could be days old. Early in the season, especially on opening day, I've watched hunters burn half a morning chasing dried out droppings like they were hot intel. Don't be that guy. Fresh poop means elk are close. Old poop means elk were here, but they might not be here now. Wallows and rubs are another clue. On opening day, you're not going to find a ton of fresh rubs unless bulls are just starting to strip velvet. But if you do find bright, wet sap running down a tree, pay attention, that's fresh. If it's dull, dark, and crusted over, it could be from last season or a few weeks ago. Same with wallows. Muddy water with tracks all around it, that's worth noting. But if it's dried up pit with no fresh sign or the water's clear, they haven't used it that day, so you might not want to waste your time. Well, let's talk about sound, because this is where archery elk hunting really separates itself. On opening day, bugles can be unpredictable. Some years, bulls are already screaming. Others, they're tight-lipped. What you're listening for isn't just volume, it's intent. A lone locator bugle way off in the dark might not mean much. But if you hear multiple bugles, if you hear cow chatter, if you hear the rhythm of a herd moving, that's the kind of sound that matters. Here's the discipline part. Don't go sprinting toward every bugle like it's your golden ticket. Opening day is full of hunter bugles. You'll hear guys blasting out the same tired locator notes every 200 yards. Elk hear it too, and they learn fast. Your job is to pick out the difference between a man-made bugle and a real bull. Listen for tone, for emotion, for location. Real elk often have an unpolished edge to their sound, like breath pushing through strain. Hunters, they usually sound too perfect, too loud, too consistent. The other mistake a lot of guys make is overcommitting to sign without context. Tracks with fresh poop might mean elk passed through 2 nights ago. A bugle with no follow-up sound could mean a hunter on the next ridge. You need layers of confirmation. Fresh tracks and fresh poop, that's live. A bugle and cow chatter, that's real. That's where you invest your energy. The key to reading sign and sound on opening day is restraint. You're gathering information, not forcing a kill shot in the first 2 hours. Every track, every sound, every rub is a piece of the puzzle. Put them together carefully, and you'll know if you're truly in the game or just chasing shadows. Opening day is a dangerous cocktail. You've got adrenaline, anticipation, and the belief that this is my shot. I don't care how seasoned you are, when that first bugle cracks across a canyon or you cut a fresh set of tracks at gray light, the urge to dive in head first is strong. And sometimes aggression is exactly what kills elk. But just as often, it's what blows them out of the country and ruins your best spot for the rest of the season. The real art of day one is knowing when to push and when to pump the brakes. Let's start with aggression. There are times when you need to make your move. If you're within 200 yards of a bull at first light, the wind is perfect and the terrain gives you cover, being aggressive can put you into bow range before that bull ever knows you're there. Hesitation in moments like that costs opportunities. Elk don't live on your schedule. If conditions line up, you move. Quiet, fast, and decisive. But here's where hunters burn themselves. Opening day aggression without context. Bulls on day one might not be fully vocal yet. They may bugle once, then shut up and move. If you go crashing in on that one bugle, you risk blowing through cows, spooking the bull, and educating the entire herd. That doesn't just cost you a morning, it can shut that drainage down for days. Patience, on the other hand, isn't about sitting on a log all day hoping elk walk by. It's controlled observation. It's hanging back just far enough to watch thermal shift, to listen for patterns, to see how elk are moving. Patience means you don't jump on the first sound, you confirm it. You layer the sign and sound together until you're confident you're moving on real active elk. Think of patience as a long-term investment. On opening day, you're not just hunting an elk, you're hunting the entire season. If you go full send into every bugle, you're burn country and burn elk. But if you play it smart, you'll learn where the elk are bedding, where they're feeding, and how they're using the terrain. That knowledge compounds. By day 2 or 3, you've built a map in your head that gives you the edge over every other hunter charging blind into the timber. Here's how I decide. When the opportunity feels immediate and conditions are stacked in my favor, I try to get aggressive. Close the gap, strike while the iron's hot. But when the situation is murky, bugles are far off, sign is mixed, wind is shifting, that's when patience saves the hunt. I hang back, I observe, I shadow, I let the elk tell me what they're doing instead of forcing my own plan onto them. The biggest mistake I see is hunters treating day one like it's their last day. They act like they've got one chance and it's now or never. That desperation bleeds into every move and elk will feel it. The truth is, day one is just the opening chapter. Hunt like you've got time. Hunt like you're willing to learn, because the more disciplined you are on opening day, the more aggressive you can be later in the week when you've got real intel to act on. So here's the takeaway. Aggression without patience is reckless. Patience without aggression is wasted time. The balance of both is what makes opening day count. Play it smart, play it disciplined, and you'll be the guy still in the game when others have already blown out their spots. Now, calling elk on opening day of the archery season is one of the trickiest parts of the game. Some hunters live for it. They can't wait to rip a locator bugle as they step out of the truck. Others are so afraid of saying the wrong thing that they leave their calls buried in the bottom of their pack. The truth, as usual, is somewhere in the middle. Opening day calling isn't about showing off. It's about using sound as a tool to gather information, make elk reveal themselves, and, if the conditions line up, pull them into bow range. Let's get something clear. The woods are noisy on opening day, not just with elk, but with hunters. You'll hear bugles bouncing across the canyons that sound like they came straight out of a contest stage. You'll hear cow calls that repeat every 30 seconds like a broken record. And guess what? The elk hear it too. Pressure and calling oftentimes go hand in hand. And if you sound like the rest of the crowd, you're training elk to shut up and go quiet. So the first principle of early season calling is restraint. You don't need to announce your presence to every bull in the country. Use your calls with intention. A single location bugle from a ridge is fine if you're trying to get a response, but don't turn it into a concert. Sometimes the smartest move is staying quiet, slipping into the timber, and letting your ears do the work instead of your diaphragm call. Now let's talk about what actually works a lot of times. On opening day, bulls are often still in transition. Some are stripping velvet, some are starting to round up cows, but most aren't yet fired up to the point of full challenge bugles. That means your calling should reflect the stage of the season. A soft cow call here and there, just enough to sound natural, can confirm your presence without raising red flags. A location bugle at the right time can pull a real bull into the conversation. The key is sounding like elk, not like a hunter trying to be elk. Here's a trick I've used countless times. Throw out a soft cow call, then sit and listen. If nothing answers, it doesn't mean you have to immediately escalate. Wait. Elk aren't in a hurry, and sometimes it takes a bull a minute or two to pipe up. If he doesn't, you've lost nothing. But if he does, now you've got a bead on his position without having educated him with a half dozen overdone calls. Another common mistake is bugling your way into elk country. Every 200 yards, guys stop, rip a bugle, then march on when nothing answers. What they don't realize is half the elk are slipping off silently ahead of them, already spooked. Or maybe they were on their way in quietly and they never got a chance to see them. On opening day, it's better to bugle sparingly and then move into elk country quietly. Let your ears catch the subtle sounds, branches breaking, faint cow talk, the shuffle of hooves in the timber. Those little cues often mean more than a distant bugle. And this can be a little bit different later in the season when those bulls are more fired up. We're talking early season. If you do get a bull to respond, here's where discipline matters. Don't blow his ears off with the loudest bugle you can muster. Match his tone. If he's soft, you stay soft. If he ramps up, then you can slowly turn the dial. Elk are social, and early season interactions are often about curiosity more than dominance. Meet him where he is instead of trying to force him into a fight he's not ready for because of the time of the season that he's at. Remember, calling on opening day is less about killing an elk right now and more about learning how they're acting this season. Are they chatty? Are they silent? Are they cautious? The way you call and the way they respond tells you everything you need to know for the days ahead. So the takeaway is this: use your calls as a scalpel, not a hammer. Be intentional. Be subtle and be willing to stay quiet if that's what the situation calls for. The hunters who bugle at every ridge usually go home frustrated that first week. The hunters who use sound as a tool are the ones who consistently find themselves inside bow range. Now, once you've confirmed that elk are in the area, whether through fresh sign, a bugle, a soft cow talk, what you do next matters more than anything. This is where a lot of hunters lose their chance on opening day. They either rush straight at the sound, stomping through the brush, skylining themselves, or they overthink it and sit frozen until the moment's gone. Making your first moves into elk country is all about calculated positioning, getting close without tipping your hand, and setting yourself up so when the opportunity comes, you're already where you need to be. The first principle is simple. Never walk straight at elk. Their senses are too sharp. You may think you're taking the shortest route, but the shortest route usually blows wind right into them, puts you in the open, or makes too much noise. The better play is to swing with terrain, use ridge lines, folds in the land, patches of dark timber, or even just slight elevation changes to cover your approach. You're not trying to win a sprint. You're trying to arrive invisible. Travel corridors are your best friend here. Elk rarely move randomly. They use the same paths to and from feeding areas, bedding cover, and water. If you can recognize a saddle, a bench, or a timber strip that connects two zones, you've found a natural funnel. Set yourself along those travel routes and you've already increased your odds before making a single call. Next comes bedding areas. On opening day, elk often return to bed early, especially under pressure. If you know where bedding cover is, thick north-facing timber, cool dark drainages, or spots close to water, you can set up along the route between feed and bed, the transition areas. But this is where discipline comes in. Charging into a bedding area on day one is a gamble. If you bump them out of their sanctuary, you may not get another chance there all season. Instead, focus on staging areas, those zones just outside bedding cover where elk linger before they lay down. That's a perfect spot to catch them moving naturally and still be in bow range. Your setup also matters. Too many hunters stop in the wide open, throw a call, and wonder why nothing happens. Elk live in timber. Set yourself where they expect other elk to be. If you're cow calling, tuck into the edge of a tree line, not out on a bald slope. If you're waiting on a bugle to close the distance, put yourself in a spot with shooting lanes, but also enough cover to keep you hidden. Elk want to see the sound. If they step into the open and don't see an elk where the sound came from, they get suspicious fast. One thing I'll stress is this. Don't overcall once you're inside the red zone. If you've made the move and you're within 100 yards, the wind is good, and you know the elk are there, less is often more. Sometimes silence kills. Let them make the next move. Let curiosity pull them in. Every sound you make is another chance to give yourself away. And finally, trust your gut. Every hunter has that moment where instinct kicks in. You feel like you need to slide 30 yards left or drop just a little lower. Listen to that. More often than not, those little adjustments are what put you exactly where you need to be when a bull steps out. That's your primitive instinct as a hunter. So when it comes to making the first moves into elk on opening day, remember not to rush. Don't freeze and don't force it. Move with the land, set up where elk naturally travel, and let your discipline do the work. A smart approach on day one doesn't just give you a shot, it sets the stage for success the rest of the season. A lot of hunters treat the middle of the day like dead time. They push hard in the morning, hear nothing, get frustrated, and then head back to camp to nap or mess around until evening. And look, I get it. The morning and evening hunts feel more alive. They're the best times to kill, and oftentimes trying to walk around in the middle of the day, you just end up bumping elk. If you completely waste the midday hours, you're also throwing away some of the best opportunities to learn the country, stay close to the herd, and even create an opening day kill shot that a lot of guys never see coming. And it's not just about pushing through timber. Elk don't disappear at noon. They bed, they stage, they adjust to pressure. They're not easy to sneak up on, and they're still out there living their lives. And if you know what to look for, midday becomes one of the most valuable times of the entire hunt. Let's start with understanding what elk do after the morning rush. Once they move off feed and into bedding cover, the herd settles down. Cows will bed first, usually in cool, shaded north-facing timber, often with some wind advantage for scent. Bulls might stage around the edges, bugling occasionally to keep tabs on the cows. If it's early season, they may be quieter, but they're rarely far from the cows. What this means for you is simple. You don't need to abandon the area just because the woods went quiet. Now, staying close doesn't mean barging right into their beds, for sure. Blow a herd out of its sanctuary on opening day and you might not see them again the rest of the hunt. Instead, use midday to shadow from a distance, stay on the downwind side, slip through the timber quietly, and keep tabs on where the herd is laying. Even if you don't make a play that day, you're banking valuable intel for the rest of the week, knowing where they went, knowing where they get up from there. Midday is also prime time for solo bulls. While herds are quiet, a lone bull might get up to wallow, grab a drink, or shift bedding spots. These bulls are often killable if you're patient and paying attention. I've killed bulls at 1 in the afternoon that I never would have seen if I'd been snoring back at camp. The trick is staying disciplined, moving slow, and letting your ears work for you. A branch snap in the timber, a faint glunk, or a soft mew can give a lone bull away when most hunters aren't there to listen. Another use of midday hours is recon. If you're not actively shadowing elk, you can use that quiet stretch of the day to scout. Check water sources, look for wallows, confirm fresh sign on ridge lines or glass saddles from a distance if you have the vantage. The key is doing it without burning energy or blowing elk out of the country. Think of it as gathering puzzle pieces. What you learn at noon often sets up the evening hunt or even the next day's plan. And don't discount rest. Midday is also when you do need to take care of yourself. You've got to eat, hydrate, nap if you're in a safe shaded spot and you don't feel like there's opportunity or you're afraid of bumping elk. The point is to stay in the game without burning out. A lot of guys hunt like their hair's on fire on opening day, and by day 3 they're wrecked. Pacing yourself doesn't mean you're soft, it means you're smart. If the morning of opening day is about discipline and patience, then the evening is about opportunity. I can't tell you how many elk I've killed or come close to killing in those last 90 minutes of daylight. For bow hunters, evenings can often be more productive than mornings, especially on day 1. That's because elk are creatures of routine, and as the heat fades and shadows stretch, they stand up, shake it off, and begin moving toward feed and water like usual. If you've played your cards right all day and done your scouting, this is where you can cash in. Here's the first key to evening strategy, and it's positioning. By late afternoon, thermals are usually getting to the point where they're about ready to drop again, just like they were before sunrise. You've got to anticipate that shift. If you try to stalk in from, above them as the wind starts sinking, you're busted before you even see an elk. Smart hunters position themselves on the downwind side of where they expect elk to rise out of their beds. If you know the travel corridor from bedding to feed, you don't have to chase. You just have to be waiting at the right spot when the elk move. This is also where patience pays off. On opening day, you might feel the urge to force something as the clock winds down. But the evening hunt is about letting elk do what elk naturally do. Don't push into bedding cover with 30 minutes left. Don't blow locator bugles across the canyon out of desperation. Trust the pattern. Elk get up, they stretch, they bugle more freely, and they start moving. And if you've been observing all day, you'll have a good idea of which direction they're headed. Calling in the evening can be especially effective, but it still has to be done with restraint. If you're close to the herd and you've shadowed them without being detected, a few soft cow calls can coax a bull to swing by on his way out. If bulls are more vocal, a location bugle might pull a response and give you the chance to cut them off. The difference in the evening is that elk are more willing to engage. They've got energy, the night ahead of them, and less reason to stay silent, and they're not just on their way to bedding. This is where and when you can let your calls breathe a little more. Just don't overdo it. Another critical piece of evening strategy is thinking beyond the moment. Too many hunters treat sunset like the finish line. They blow the herd out in a desperate last-minute push, then wonder why the next morning feels empty. Don't forget, tomorrow is already coming. Your goal isn't just to hunt the evening, it's to set yourself up for day 2. That means if you get winded or if your approach gets sloppy, you're not just losing the evening, you're losing the herd for the rest of the hunt. So how do you set up for tomorrow's play? By paying attention. Where do the elk feed at night? Where do they water? Which ridges do they use to get there? If you can answer those questions in the evening, you'll know exactly where to be at first light the next day. Sometimes the smartest move is not taking a risky shot tonight, but instead backing out clean so you can be in the perfect position tomorrow morning when the wind and the thermals line up again. The evening hunt is where opening day often comes together, but it's also where restraint and discipline are tested. Hunt smart. Position yourself correctly, call with purpose, and always think about how tonight's move will echo into tomorrow. That's how you turn opening day from a gamble into a strategy. Because, the thing about opening day, it feels like everything. You've been waiting all year for this moment. You've trained, you've scouted, you've shot your bow until your release hand was raw. And then when that first September morning finally hits, it's easy to believe that this day decides it all, but it doesn't. Opening day doesn't decide whether you kill a bull or not. What it does decide is how the rest of your hunt is going to unfold. The choices you make in those first 24 hours echo for the entire season. Hunt sloppy, get winded, blow through bedding cover, or call recklessly, and you may spend the rest of the week trying to recover from mistakes you didn't need to make. Hunt disciplined, patient, and intentional, and you stack the odds in your favor every day that follows. That's why I say you don't win or lose your hunt on day one. What you do is set the tone, and that tone should be about confidence and control. Confidence that you don't have to force an encounter. Control over your emotions so adrenaline doesn't push you into bad decisions. If you can master that balance, you're not just hunting elk, you're hunting the hunt itself. Think back on what we covered. It starts with trailhead discipline, treating your first steps with the same seriousness as your final shot, then reading sign and sound, layering information until you know you're dealing with live elk, balancing aggression and patience, pushing when it's right, holding back when it's not, using calls with restraint early season, making them tools, not crutches, positioning yourself along travel routes instead of blundering straight in, using the middle of the day to shadow, scout, and pace yourself. And finally, playing the evening smart, trusting natural patterns, and setting up for tomorrow. All of this ties back to one thing: respect for the hunt, respect for the animals, respect for the process. Elk hunting, especially with a bow, is not about instant gratification. It's about grinding day after day, adapting, learning, and being ready when the opportunity comes. Opening day isn't the time to prove how aggressive you can be. It's the time to prove how disciplined you can be. I've blown opening days. I've let adrenaline win. I've charged in. I've overcalled. I've burned drainages so badly that I might as well have set off fireworks in the timber. And every single time it cost me. But I've also played it smart. I've held back, read the sign, trusted the process. And I've had hunts where day one didn't end with a bull on the ground, but it did end with me being perfectly set up for day 2, 3, or day 4. And those hunts are the ones that turned into success. So here's my challenge to you. Don't let opening day trick you into thinking it's all or nothing. Don't burn your best spot because you couldn't hold back. Don't force calls that don't need to be made. Instead, use opening day to learn. Use it to position yourself. Use it to build confidence and momentum that carries through the rest of the season. Because the guys who last, the guys who consistently tag elk, aren't the ones who win or lose in the first few hours. They're the ones who treat every step, every sound, and every choice with discipline. They're the ones who know that elk hunting is about the long game. If you want to take your preparation and your hunting game to the next level, check out Team Backbone. It's more than a membership. It's a community of relentless hunters sharpening each other with proven strategies, exclusive gear discounts, and direct access to me. You'll get member-only content, training tools, and support that gives you the edge when it matters most. Step into the inner circle and show your backbone at backboneunlimited.com. Thanks for being here. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.